the birth of Jesus really was a declaration of war.
Yeah, like game
Think about
on.
that, a declaration of war
Yeah.
to redeem us, to bring us back out of captivity. Man, I love that. And when Charles Martin goes into his account, his very dramatic account of what was going on, you will get a fresh perspective, I promise you, of what was happening from a heavenly perspective during the birth of Jesus.
Stories stir the soul.
Stories reveal.
And stories heal.
In this podcast, we will give you an inside look at someone who's had a life-changing breakthrough.
Real people, real stories with real breakthroughs. As a health and wellness expert and coach, and Todd as a men's mentor,
we've seen firsthand what God can do when it comes to a breakthrough. So lean in, listen well. This could be your biggest breakthrough.
Hello and Merry Christmas. You're listening to this live time. This is Wendy and Todd with your biggest breakthrough.
Hey, it is going to be a wonderful season of the year. Anytime we celebrate Christmas, it has such rich, deep meaning for Christians.
Yes.
And so we're hoping to touch on that today in a little bit different way.
A totally different way. But you know what? It'd be great, actually, if we were celebrating Christmas every day, quite frankly.
Hello.
We
ought to be, seriously. Yeah. We really understand the meaning of Christmas. Well, speaking about the meaning of Christmas, our pastor preached a sermon a couple of years ago that really caught our attention because he was talking about how many different perspectives there are in giving the account of Jesus' birth. In fact, he himself has preached it from Mary's perspective on the birth of Jesus.
Yeah, and then he shared about it from Joseph's perspective.
Or what about from the angel's perspective? That's probably an interesting way to give the account of Jesus' birth.
Yeah, or what about the wise?
Oh, that's always.
Can you imagine
That's a top hit right there.
You think so?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the wise men's perspective.
Yeah, and of course from the shepherd's perspective, he gave he's done sermons in the past about the shepherd's perspective.
Yeah. Now I don't know if he did the sheep's perspective, but
not likely. Yeah, that would be one of the challenges. Oh, not even. Wow. Well, I love the fact that when he kind of summarized everything, he said, this year I want to talk about the birth of Jesus from more of a cosmic perspective. Really, what was going on through the heavenly realms? If we could look through the lens of heaven at the birth of Jesus, what would we see?
And he did such a great job on the sermon. It really made an impact on us. And so much so that we started kind of seeking out different books and authors on the topic of just heaven and just how it would be when Jesus was born in that perspective.
Well, actually, the book came to us.
Well, okay.
We
also looked for some
Son of Man by Charles.
Yes.
I just want to go back to what Pastor was preaching in that sermon, because this is what caught our attention. And that is that the birth of Jesus really was unveiling he as a rightful king.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And it was also telling us about the birth of Jesus and how it was a warning to the human race about the consequence of sin, basically. Right?
When you're looking
when you think about it,
the cuddly little baby Jesus in the manger, you don't think about those kinds of things, or that this really was the initiation of God's plan of salvation, and that the birth of Jesus guaranteed Satan's defeat.
That's right.
And I think of it now because this is actually what he said, so I can't coin the phrase.
But the birth of Jesus really was a declaration of war.
Yeah, like game
Think about
on.
that, a declaration of war
to redeem us, to bring us back out of captivity. Man, I love that. And when Charles Martin goes into his account, his very dramatic account of what was going on, you will get a fresh perspective, I promise you, of what was happening from a heavenly perspective during the birth of Jesus.
Yeah, again, we've never met Charles Martin, but I've read a lot of his books and even listened to his audibles. But Son of Man is a great book. But yeah, just to hear his words is so powerful. And so Todd actually pre-recorded an excerpt from his book, and you did this for your grandkids initially.
Yeah, a couple of years ago I did. It's 16 minutes long, and I was hoping it would still keep their attention. I hope it'll keep your attention.
Well, we were listening to it prior to sharing it with you, and you have such a great voice, Todd. Like, it is just a radio. Listening, it's a great voice.
All right.
But it's so great that we were listening to this excerpt in bed, and it's so great. I fell asleep to it. So I hope you don't follow.
So did I. I get that kind of soothing voice at night. All right. So, well, listen to it. If you want to go to sleep, that'd be fine too. But it's an excerpt really worth listening to, and really hope you enjoy it. I hope it brings in new meaning for you.
Yeah, enjoy.
The Christmas story. What a great time of year to remember again what the Christmas story is all about. And many, many years ago, with my children and then later my grandchildren, before opening presents, we would always open up the Bible and we would read from the Gospels the story of Jesus' birth. And I got to say, it was very meaningful. And it seemed like it always kind of described it as this beautiful setting under a starry night with angels singing and shepherds in the background and Mary and Joseph there cuddling the baby Jesus with, in the stable with cows lowing in the background and sheep. And, it all seemed so kind of warm and fuzzy and cuddly and nice. And, to some degree, it probably was. But I wonder if there isn't a little bit different perspective. So this year I want to tell the Christmas story as it's written in a book by Charles Martin. And the book's entitled, What If It's True? And he starts out by talking about the meaning of Jesus' birth. And I think as we listen, we might get a new appreciation and a little different perspective on all that was really going on during the time that Jesus was born. So, here we go. The night is cool and turning cooler. The air smells of wood smoke, lamp oil, and manure. Quirinius is governing Syria. Caesar Augustus has just issued a decree that says, register the world, take a census. And under the dominating hand of Rome, men and their families scurry off to their ancestral homes to register, and Jerusalem is now overflowing, and Bethlehem is packed. It is dark, and a young man leads a young girl riding a donkey up a small trail into Bethlehem. He is pensive. Every few seconds he glances over his shoulder. The rumors have preceded them, as have the whispers. She's pregnant, but not with his child. And to complicate matters, they're not even married. It's a scandal. Well, according to Jewish law, it was a scandal. He should put her out, and she should be stoned. Now, the innkeeper has had a long day, and he watches warily. The tired young man asks, Sir, do you have a room? The innkeeper shakes his head. Full up? Nope, we are full up. The young man strains his voice. Do you know of anywhere? And the innkeeper leans on his broom handle. He is half annoyed. His patience is thin. And he says, well, try down there, but you're wasting your time. Well, the girl winces. The contractions have started. The stain on her dress suggests that her water broke. The innkeeper's wife eyes the barn and then whispers, we can make room. Well, hours later, the couple returns. The young girl is sweating, doubled over. The young man is frantic. The innkeeper is in bed. Upon hearing the knock, he rises reluctantly and unlocks the door. Son, I told you. Please, sir. He points to the young woman. She's bleeding. The innkeeper's wife appears over his shoulder. She says nothing, which says plenty. The innkeeper trims his wick and, for the first time, looks into the young man's eyes. The innkeeper gently grabs the reins of the donkey and leads the young woman to the barn, where he spreads fresh hay to make a bed. His wife appears with a towel and some rags, and she brushes the two men out and helps the girl. The innkeeper and the young man stand at the door of the stable, a little more than a cave carved into the rock wall. The animals seem amused at all this ruckus. The innkeeper lights his pipe. The young man shuffles nervously. Behind them, the screams begin. The innkeeper speaks first. You, the two everyone is talking about? The young man doesn't take his eyes off the cave. Yes, sir. Well, another puff and then another cloud. What happened? The young man is not quick to answer. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. The innkeeper laughs. I don't know. I was young once. She's a pretty girl. Another scream echoes out of the barn. Is the baby yours? The young man rubs his hands together, calloused, muscled. They're the hands of a stonemason. No, he's not. I mean, he will be, but I'm not the innkeeper chuckles. You're sure it's a he? The young man nods. Yeah, pretty sure. You intend to marry? The young man glances over his shoulder. Soon as she heals up. Another scream, and the innkeeper changes the subject. You here to register? The young man nods. What family? We're the house of David. The innkeeper raises an eyebrow. Good family. The screams have now risen to a fever pitch. The innkeeper's wife calls from the stall. Her voice is trembling. Honey, I need some hot water. The innkeeper disappears and leaves the young man alone. He stands repeating the same phrase over and over and over. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Hear, O Israel. Above, a star has risen, abnormally bright. Now, put that scene on pause for just a moment because things are going to shift here. We're going to go up into the heavenly realm, so hang on for the ride. Here we go. Elsewhere, in the throne room of heaven, they are arranged in laser-perfect rows, 10,000 in a row, and tens of thousands of rows, trailing out farther than any eye can see. They are radiant, every shade of skin color, dressed in a sea of brilliant white robes, decked in glistening gold, chiseled, elegant features. They stand somewhere above 10 feet tall. Many have hair to their waists. Their wings stretch another 10 feet into the air. The tips are almost touching. And rising on the air is a chorus of voices. They come from higher up, thundering, declaring, proclaiming. They are reading from an ancient text. The first voice speaks out of how he will be born of a woman. Another one says, from the house of David, born of a virgin, will sit on the throne of David, an eternal throne. Emmanuel, born in Bethlehem, worshipped by wise men. The voices continue. He will be zealous for his father, filled with God's Spirit, heal many, speak in parables, perform miracles, betrayed for 30 pieces of silver, a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, scourged, spat on, crucified between two thieves. His hands and feet would be pierced. He would thirst, commend his spirit to his Father. Stared at in death, buried with the rich, and raised from the dead. As the last word echoes off, all eyes turn toward the light several miles off in the distance where a king is seated on his throne. He is resplendent, like 10,000 nuclear bombs exploding over and over and over. He's magnificent, splendor indescribable, majesty on high, the brightness of the sun times 10 trillion. Then the voices hush. Every angel kneels, bowing, face to the floor. The sun is quiet. Now he's attended by an archangel, one of 3. This is the archangel that was described as the, quote, seal of perfection, full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. He had been, quote, in Eden, the garden of God, where you were perfect in your ways from the day you were created until iniquity was found in you. Eventually, this archangel grew jealous of all the praise that was leveled at the sun. Wanting it, he reached up, tried to grab it, and fell. Disguising himself as an angel of light, he led a rebellion, and he took a third of the other angels with him. Mutiny! God the Father would have none of it, and he cast the dark angel out of heaven like lightning, hurling him earthward where he has stirred up trouble for millennia. After he left, the Lord God King made a new creation out of dust. This was his most stunning to date, made in his very image. When finished, the king pressed his lips to the mouth of his creation, and he breathed in his very breath, the ruach of God, giving man life. Angry and envious, the rebelling angel slithered in and took them all hostage. He kidnapped everyone. Bondage, slavery, mass carnage. Things are bad. The only hope is a rescue mission. It's why the Son has to leave. Whispers are, this is a suicide mission. Slowly, the sun rises. It is pin-drop quiet. He places his scepter gently in the corner of his throne. Unbuckling his sword, he leans it upright next to the scepter. God the Father rises as his Son crosses the fiery stones. The time has come. On earth, the sons of Adam have lost their way, each gone their own, astray. The entire human race has been taken captive, and the enemy is torturing them. The Son has volunteered for a rescue mission, but it's a prisoner exchange. The whispers are true. Their freedom will cost the Son everything. His life for theirs. As he turns to leave, leaning against the two giant doors that lead out into the Milky Way, he turns to his Father. His eyes are piercing, penetrating, inviting. He smiles. We're going to need more rooms in this house when I come back. He waves his hand across the timeline, because I'm bringing them with me. The Son, whose countenance was like the sun shining in its strength, exits heaven, blanketed in the singing of more than 100 million angels. The Word becomes flesh, and he is gone. From the Bible. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory. Now, that's what was going on in heaven, in the eternal realms, while the birth of Jesus was taking place. So let's continue the story. Back to the stable. The innkeeper returns as the cries of a baby pierce the night. The child's lungs are strong. The woman places the baby on the mother's chest, and the two lie exhausted. The young mother stares at the boy, and she hears the echo of the angel that appeared to her some 10 months ago. Quote, he will be great, and he will be called the Son of the Highest, and the Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there will be no end. Well, this is a bittersweet moment, because Mary knows well the words of both Isaiah and the psalmist, and how the Messiah will suffer, how he'll be cursed and bruised, pierced, despised, rejected, oppressed, afflicted. He'll bear our griefs, carry our sorrows. He will give his back to those who will beat him, pour out his soul unto death, and bear the sin of many. She turns to the man, Joseph, who did not leave her when he had every right, the honorable man who will be her husband. She hands him the boy and speaks his name, Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus the Messiah. Together they are pondering the prophecy. Quote, the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel, God with us. But not all are so inviting of this news. In fact, in the dark night air, invisible armies draw invisible battle lines. Forces gather, battle plans are drawn. Mary wraps Jesus tightly in swaddling clothes, lifts him from the stone trough, and cradles the suckling baby. Joseph kneels and presses his lips to the forehead of his son. He knows the words by heart, written 740 years ago. Isaiah, the prophet, was speaking about his son, about this very moment, about this improbable beginning, about this king who stepped off his throne to become a boy, who will grow into a man and walk from this cave to that hill, and then down into hell, to ransom you and me. From Isaiah, for unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, And the government will be upon his shoulder, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end, upon the throne of David and over his kingdom, to order it and establish it with judgment and justice. From that time forward, even forever, the zeal of the Lord of hosts will perform this. Wow. Now that is the way to see the birth of Jesus, the story of Christmas. Because don't you think most of us see Jesus as this long-haired, soft-spoken pacifist, speaker of fables? He's the mystic guru. He never lost his cool. Kept his mouth shut when the soldiers nailed him to a tree. Nothing could be further from the truth. Jesus was begotten. He was not created like us. He existed before the ages, before the eons. And, we tend to focus on the baby in the manger, and I'm all for that. But, in minimizing Jesus to someone, that we can touch and something we can wrap our heads around, well, then we've just reduced him. Jesus was the only begotten Son in the throne room before he arrived here as a child. Jesus Christ was, is, and forever will be the King of all kings. And when he came to earth, it was a declaration of war upon the dark, invisible world of demonic powers. Jesus came in order to rescue you and me by his death and resurrection so that we could be with him for eternity. And that's what we want to remember when we recall the birth of Jesus, the declaration of war. Hallelujah. You have been rescued by the King. Have you given yourself to him? That's the question we want to answer.
Well, that's a wrap for today's show. We hope you enjoyed it. As always, we love spending time with you right here on Your Biggest Breakthrough podcast. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode. But until then, just head on over to yourbiggestbreakthrough.com where you'll find some free resources and information and a place where you can comment, and we would love to dialogue with you there. Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.